By PC, Pod or Pad, you are listening to Paid to Play. I'm Rob Farker, your host for the exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the bits of you that you worry make you seem silly, geeky or odd, into your income-generating life is one of the best things you can do. It might not be easy, but it is easier than we think and even fear. And with the help of my guest for this episode, I would like to show you how. Kimberley Clark is a self-published author. She has recently finished a trilogy of novels known as the Battles in the Dark trilogy. They occupy a space in the fiction universe that has been known by varying names: urban fantasy, paranormal romance, adult fantasy. Generally, they involve sexy, ass-kicking women going up against vampires, werewolves, demons, and other threats that otherwise are limited to just going bump in the night in real life anyway. And they can be a good, fun, rollicking read, especially when their adult nature not only makes them a bit spicy, but also gives the author a bit more freedom to make sure that their characters take no prisoners. Kimberley has long held the belief that there's not much point in having a bucket list of things that you want to accomplish in life, as much as having a list itself is worthwhile, but really you should be attempting to mark off as many items on that list as possible. And getting a novel written and published was on Kimberley's list. She is a lover of reading books and, of course, watching movies. And once she started writing, well, the idea of doing a trilogy came naturally. As I mentioned, the Battles in the Dark trilogy is available now on Amazon, both as a digital download and also as a paperback book. And the last novel in the Battles in the Dark series, Reign of Fury, came out at the end of last year. It is a pleasure to be able to chat with Kimberley at the moment, especially as she's looking at a bit of a change in genres for her next work. Kimberley, thank you very much for coming on the Pay to Play podcast.
Thank you for having me, Rob. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. So imagine that once this podcast chat wraps up, I give you a magic ticket that is good to allow you to do one thing that you have either been doing lately and would like more time to do, or something that you've perhaps had on your bucket list and just haven't had the chance to get around to yet. The ticket also includes a magic rearranging and clearing of your schedule to give you the necessary time to get that thing done. What would be on your short list for you to use that ticket for?
First thing, I want to watch the next episode of Banshee. It's one of my favorite TV shows on at the moment. It's actually in its last season. If anyone hasn't seen that show yet, it's about a criminal who ends up taking on the role of a sheriff, unbeknownst to the rest of the town. And he basically runs the town like he is. He takes on the person of his criminal past and everything to get things done. And it has a bit of everything in it. It has, the town bad guy, it has the mob, it has the Indians, the white supremacists, all through the past few seasons. And currently, yes, it's in the season 4, which it's about to finish.
It sounds like it's a bit of a Western, like Deadwood and Justified and those of that ilk. Would that be right?
No, it's actually, it's from the same people that did Strike Back.
Aha.
So
I have seen a couple of episodes of that, yeah.
So it's a very violent and the main guy, you always know every episode he's going to be beaten up and he's also going to sleep with someone throughout each episode. So that's what you're guaranteed.
So you definitely be catching up on Banshee. Anything else?
Anything else? Oh, God, if I had the time, I would be reading again. I've got a few Matthew Riley books I want to get into. Because I write in the urban fantasy genre, If I do read at all now, I actually like to read other genres. And Matthew Riley was one of the first ones I got into. I read his first book and his last book. I love them both, especially his last book, which was The Great Zoo of China, which is like Jurassic Park, but with dragons. And now I'm wanting to read the sequel of his first book, which is Ice Station, which is called Area 7, which is a series to do with a particular mercenary known as Scarecrow.
I have heard of the Scarecrow series of novels, yeah.
Yes.
Sort of, yeah, a little bit more adventurous, that kind of thing.
It's very, very action orientated, which I really love. So it's non-stop throughout. It's a lot of fun. You can't take it seriously. So you know how you watch those action movies and you're like, that can't happen in real life. It's a lot like that.
Been watching a few of those lately. What with Channel 1 running the Friday night Manly Man Hero Night or whatever it was. So and my wife and I finally caught up with the James Bond series and watched Spectre last night. So yes, I do know what you mean. Yeah.
Otherwise, if anything else, I'd love to get back doing Krav Maga again. I've been unable to get to it for a long time now. It's a Israeli form of martial arts, which I absolutely love. And basically it's more giving you situational things that you learn how to deal with. So if someone comes at you with a knife, if they come from behind you, if you're sitting down at the time, a lot of scenarios like that to help you.
Okay. So, I mean, I've had let's face it, a minimal exposure to martial arts myself. So, from the sounds of it, it takes a very practical, almost research-based approach to self-defense. You know, actually looking at, as you mentioned, the scenarios and situations that a person in the modern day might potentially encounter, and just looking at training a practitioner to be able to come out of those situations. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of got a reputation of a no bullshit martial art. You know, if people, you know, if whenever you drop the name Krav Maga, you can say karate, you can say capoeira, all those kind of things. But if you tell someone that you're a practitioner of Krav Maga, it kind of has that, ooh, that can't sound. You know, we know those Israelis don't mess around. That sounds very nasty and special forces-y kind of stuff.
It can be pretty full on, especially when you practice it over in the other countries. We're very limited in what we're allowed to learn, especially because a lot of the maneuvers are to do with basically killing someone, because it's basically the Israeli army learns all this stuff, and it's a lot of street fighting involved. So we've brought it down to basically the basics, and based on our laws, what we're allowed to do, especially with putting someone in a resistance hold, and what we're able to do with that person if they've got a weapon.
So, yeah, restricted by basically the laws that say, you know, a human being cannot be a lethal weapon, or at least ideally cannot be a trained lethal weapon, unless they are part of a standing military force, one would assume. But yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, that sounds like a fantastic list of stuff to get back to, but taking it back to the writing, because that is your main thing right at the moment. Naturally, writers always start out as voracious readers. I mean, I think particularly with reading, it's kind of a hard question to ask, because, you know, most readers are just too busy getting lost in books to kind of take that step back and realize, holy shit, this is my thing. But do you remember a point when you kind of realized that you are a reader, or that writing, becoming a writer yourself was the next logical step based on your passion?
Actually, it had nothing, it had to do with reading, but it didn't. Because I'm a huge movie buff, everyone always said to me I should have been in the movie industry. And because I knew nothing about it, I didn't know how to write scripts. And because I read all the time, I read all genres, I watch all genres, I was like, you know what? I'll write a book. And so that was just one of my goals, to write a story based on, I guess, influences from some of my favorite shows. And yeah, that's how it came about. It was just one of those sudden things. It wasn't something I grew up believing I would become or anything. And it was funny because I thought it was that point in time when I actually started writing. But when I look back over the past, there was a particular point when I moved up to Queensland in grade 3. And I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I decided that I was going to write a book. But it wasn't actually me writing a book. It was actually me just copying a book. From word to word, and then I turned up to my new school and I was like, I wrote a book. And then a few years later, one of our assignments was we had to make a children's book for class, and my teacher enjoyed mine so much she actually sent it into a competition to compete. Obviously didn't win, but it was that point that I was like, oh, I may be able to do something like this. And yeah, but I never thought about it again until later on, because I grew up changing my mind on what I wanted to be. So I originally did psychology. I've got my honours in psych, so I thought I was going down that road. But then, yeah, I just decided one day. I think I've gone through with that bucket list that you were talking about. I've been putting things on there and then I just go and do them. So it was like I moved to LA one time, but it was only just one day I went, you know what? I'm going to move to LA. And I did a couple of months later. It was just a random thing and I did it. And But with the writing now, it's grown into something more than just accomplishing reading a book. It was, I want to continue doing this and get to the point where I make a great living out of it. And, you know, it's such an accomplishment just writing a book in itself that there's something there that will always be there past the time when you die and everything that people will remember you by.
Yeah. Leaving something of yourself behind. Yeah.
Yes.
So, an interesting experience there where, you know, you went from just, I'd like to do this, I've done it, it's done with, I can, you know, go on and do the next thing. Pardon me, I'm getting a bit tongue-tied myself here. But instead, actually discovering that once you'd done it and it was done, you thought, I don't want to stop doing that. I don't want to move on to the next thing. This thing is great. So
yes.
I imagine that must have come as perhaps something of a shock at the time, especially for someone who has been so driven to just, you know, get the thing done, tick it off, right, next thing on the list.
It is in the sense that I never thought I would look at this as a possible full-time job. Because I always thought I'd be doing something else completely. And, yeah, it was a real eye-opener for me that, you know, there's a possibility that I could do it. But, it was so – I don't know what to say to that.
No worries. Well, look, on that first book that you wrote when you decided to cross off your bucket list, was it part one of the trilogy? Was it The Species Within that you just sort of, sat down and started writing and it was the thing that came out of your fingers? Or was it another project that perhaps got set aside when you then started moving on The Species Within and the rest of the trilogy?
No, The Species Within was the first one that I've tried to write. The one thing I realized now that I've been writing for a bit now is that I like to make things complicated with my writing. And when I wrote the first book, even though I hadn't planned on it being more than one book. As soon as I started figuring it all out, I got to a point where I was like, okay, that's going to be my ending there. Oh, I'm going to have to write another 2 books to add to it. It just happens. I can't do short stories. I go to this group at every month, a writers group, and every month they have a microfiction, which I've never been able to do because I can't write short stories at all. Like it's such an art in itself to be able to create such a small story that everyone loves. I like to mine to be complicated and long, it seems.
It does seem like an odd thing. I remember discovering at one point that one of my early favourite novelists, Anne McCaffrey, I'd read a few of her novels by this time, and then I got an anthology of her short stories, and I was reading through a few of them, and I thought, hang on a second, this short story and this short story, they're almost straight up chapters, single chapters, out of these other books that I read. I mean, it seemed odd at the time, seeing this author who had, written these short stories first and then turned them into novels. And having tried my hand at writing a novel once or twice and seeming to come up against this problem of what happens next, or, once I got it written so far, this is not going anywhere that I want it to, or am interested in writing any further on. It's almost felt like maybe I need to start with short stories, but that's never been an option for you. You've just started writing, and the material that you've had it's only been able to fit a novel.
Yes. Oh, well, actually, I lied. There was a time when I wanted to put in a short story for a competition, and that particular short story, when I look at it now, I think it's not that great, but it actually became a novel idea, which I'm actually working on 3 projects at the moment, and they're all different genres. And this particular one was about an alien ghost, which I have built now into a novel, which is a sci-fi apocalyptic type novel. So I did try, but once again, it turned into a novel.
It exploded on you, yeah.
It exploded.
Must be frustrating. You have a goal and you're just like, no, it's not enough. It's not letting me make it any smaller than it wants to be.
Yes.
So you sat down and you started writing The Species Within. What was that process like for every, using myself as an example, having sat down to write a book once or twice, I did myself. I've got a first draft of a novel which is sort of like a sequel to The War of the Worlds tucked away, and I've not yet had the guts to kind of go back to it and try and redraft it for practice's sake, if nothing else. What is that process like of going from just sitting down and writing to getting something that is ready to put in front of an audience, or upload to Amazon for an audience, if you see what I mean?
It's actually very different for every author, especially when you have your fantasy, things like that, your sci-fi. You need to know everything about your universe. So that's your first step. And even if it's stuff that you don't include into your book at the time, it may be information that you include into a book further on. So it's knowing everything about your characters, what they look like, what are their personalities like, what is the world like, are there differences from our world to the world that you're creating, and what is the reasons behind it. Some people like to write or do a point form of every chapter and what's going to be in every chapter. I'm not good at that. I tried it and it didn't work out the way I wanted it. So I've actually found the best way for me to go about it was I had milestones throughout the novel. So you have your start and then different points along the way that you know that you have to get to. and you just fill in the middle. And then the other thing on top of that is it's making the decision whether or not you want to do it. So if you're just sitting there and like, oh, I want to do it, but you need to make a decision. Do you want to be a writer or not? Do you want to be an author? And actually do it. And writing all the time, even if it's like a sentence or a paragraph. The one thing I found with the first book that I did, and I found a lot of other authors had the same thing, it's getting past that first chapter because you keep doing draft after draft after draft.
Yeah.
And you're never happy with it. People have to stop and go, okay, you may not be happy with it right now. Okay, move on, leave it for a while and work on the other parts of your book. Then come back to it and you'll see it with fresh eyes. Just don't stop moving with it. Otherwise you get stuck. And I was stuck on this one particular, originally my book had a prologue and I was stuck on this prologue for like a good few months, just going over it, and it still didn't work. After all that time, I threw it out. So it now has no prologue. But that was wasted time because I kept going over it and over it. I could have moved on and gotten further in the novel if I stopped doing the draft after draft after draft. But that's not saying once you complete the entire first draft that you don't do draft after draft. It's just that doing your first draft, that's the hard part.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to chat with another self-published author, a lady by the name of Joanna Penn at one point, and I'd sort of been following her on and off for a little while. And one of the things she said was that when she was starting out, she thought that what you had to do as an author was to write something very highbrow or, literate or important, but the struggle with writing kind of stopped when she sort of said, stuff it. Let's just write the novel I want to write. And out of it came what turned into the Arcane series, which was very adventuresome and had a kick-ass leading lady who, funnily enough, was also the character is also a student of Krav Maga, and who is kind of a Lara Croft with the serial numbers filed off. Did you ever have that struggle when you decided to sit down and write your novel, or did the world and characters of the Battles in the Dark trilogy sort of come naturally? Were they the thing that you just started straight on immediately?
I started on it immediately. I think people thinking that everything has to be highbrow it's completely wrong, because look at all the different genres out there. And you can't say, a lot of all the books out there, they're all highbrow, they're all literary masterpieces. They're not. Some of them are just a good, fun read. And that's what I wanted, a good, fun read, something that people enjoyed. And, they spent so many hours delving into. But I never at any point thought I was going to write a literary masterpiece or anything like that. I'm not that good yet. Maybe down the track when I've evolved a lot more as an author, and you come up with that concept and the way of writing. But until then, no.
So you got the first book in the trilogy written. How much outside input did you have during the process? Now, from what I understand, really the first draft kind of just needs to be purely kept to you, and maybe the first and second revisions as well. Did you have an editor come in and look at it? How much involvement did other people have in actually getting it ready to be published?
This is one of the struggles that I had, which led into a struggle. Basically, first-time authors, I do recommend that you get someone to critique your work. And it's not so much an edit. It's basically someone looking at your work to look at your storyline. Does it flow? How's your characterization? How each chapter works? What are your good points, bad points that need to be worked on? Things like that. So that was the one thing I wanted the first time around, and I recommend to any first author. I haven't used one for my second or third, but that first time around, I wanted to see that how I was writing was decent enough and my storylines were good, things like that. After that, you do a new draft, and I did have a few people read it that were close family and everything. Probably the worst idea ever. And then I got an editor involved. And this is where I had the complications, which was an advice I give to any new author starting out: finding a good editor. Now, the first time I started out, you think someone who's an editor, the advice they give you is really good advice. When they say change something, change it, do this, do that to it. So you go along with it because editors should know what the best way is to put your work forth and everything. And when the editor came back to me, they said to me, you know, they were really happy with all the changes I've made. It was now at a publishable level. And I was so happy with that. So I published it. Now, keeping in mind, you have editors for a reason, because you will, as an author, you are not going to see your mistakes because you are looking at it so often, you just don't see them. I published it. And then down the track, I got a bad review, which had to do with all the errors within the book, which I thought, you know, I completely lost. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I should never have become an author. Like, every bad negative thought went through my head. So I had to get a new editor. And so they went through it, and I went through it again, redid it. Then they went through it, and once again the same thing happened. It still had a lot of errors in it. I just didn't understand why. And so I think my first book ended up having about 4 to 5 different editors in the end, and it got to a point where I said, no matter what editor you put on, they all have different voices themselves. So therefore, and they have different techniques. So therefore, no matter what you do, they're going to change how you've done things to their technique. And it will just constantly be changing, constantly. So that was my biggest struggle the first time with it all. Sorry, what was the question to begin with?
Well, basically, you did answer it. Did you get people involved in reviewing that first book? And one thing I do want to ask, were these editors, did you have to hire them?
Yes.
Okay. So there was basically there was a rate that you had to pay for their editing services.
Yes. Yeah. So based on these particular situations, I've learnt one important thing, and what I will say to new authors: make sure you get samples done by these editors when you go to hire one. So you ask each editor that you approach, can you please do a sample? And they'll say, okay, I will do. If they say no, don't bother with them. They need to prove to you that they can do the work. If you have someone that's constantly changing all your words, what they should be doing is looking at how to restructure maybe the sentence, but it's still your words, your voice. And I've had editors that, my books are more in the erotica, urban fantasy genre. And then I had someone that really only dealt with romance. So she edited only romance, so therefore she started replacing some of my words to really romancy words, which didn't fit with my genre. And so that's why I say to people now, you need that whole, you get the sample done, and if you're happy, then go with that person. But get a few people to do it. Then after that, other people involved. It's something I wish I had learned a long time. I didn't have any help at all from anyone the first time around when I did my first book. And this is some of the stuff that I wish I knew back then, which was after you get that final draft done, get some beta readers to read it. So these are people basically that you don't know, and they read through it and they pick up all the errors that you may have missed, and maybe say put questions here and there of maybe something that doesn't make sense to them, and gives you a different perspective of someone that does read your genre, which I wish I did.
Well, but from the sounds of it, a lesson learned for the future books.
Definitely a lesson learned.
So in terms of getting the book actually out there, you did mention that you published it. Now, we've already set out that you are a self-published author.
Yes.
And it does seem as though there is this kind of choice at the moment for authors out there as to whether to approach existing publishing houses or whether to actually take their work and get it up directly on the various sites that exist, Amazon, Smashwords, all those kinds of things. Did you try the other way first, or were you just straight up going with self-publishing? And what brought you to that decision, whichever it was?
Funny, I originally was going to go the traditional way, but after doing a lot of research, so when you actually decide to go that particular direction, and one thing you have to work out first, who is your audience? Is it an Australian audience? Is it a UK audience? Is it an American audience? Which also plays into how you spell your words. So because I went for more the US audience, everything I wrote was in US spelling. If you want to get with a publisher, you need an agent. While here in Australia, you don't necessarily need an agent because I don't know if many people know, but there's a few of the major publishing groups that certain days of the week they allow submissions. That's without an agent. But in the US, if you want to be done, get with a major publishing company, you need an agent. And that's when you have to do the research in, okay, what agency to, out of those agents, which one reads your genre? And then after that, you have to look at their requirements for each book. And I found out very quickly that the trend at the moment, at that time, was they didn't like long novels. So what they were looking for was about an 80,000 to 90,000 word novel. So that's the average size of a novel. Sometimes with your fantasy and sci-fi, they'll go a bit more, which is maybe 100, 110,000. My first novel was over 150,000 words. So that alone told me I can't even apply to these people because when you send out a query letter, that's one of the first things that they look at is the word count. So they won't even read my query letter because of that word count. So that's when I basically made the decision to go self-publishing because there was no other choice at the point in time. However, the trend has slowly started to change where they are looking for longer novels, which is good for a lot of people. But I know for a lot of people it's a struggle to work out what is the best avenue to go. Traditional is the whole thing that a lot of people don't see the self-publish as real authors. There's still that stigma with them. You know, the prestige of being a traditional author, you get it in the bookstores, you get the promotion through you hear all this stuff that goes with it. However, a lot of that has changed also. So if you get through a traditional publisher the first time round, you still have to do all your own marketing and promoting. People think writing the book is the hard part. It's actually marketing that's the hard part. And you don't realize that until you've actually done it yourself. Then you've got to remember you only get a small percentage. So anywhere between 10 to 15% of the profits of that book. And then on top of that, if you have an agent, they take another 10 to 15% off that 10 to 15% you just got. So the amount that you're getting is actually quite small. Even if you get an advance, you will never get another royalty check until you have sold that many copies worth first. So that's why a lot of the advances now are actually quite small, so people can actually get past that first amount. With self-publishing, you also have a lot of control over a lot of things that happen, such as what's on your cover, how your book is formatted. You get, obviously, all the profits, but the only downside is you have to pay for everything. You know, you've got to pay for your editors, you've got to pay for your cover, you've got to pay for the formatting unless you learn it yourself. The thing that a lot of authors don't realize is you can still get into bookstores. You just have to find the bookstores that are willing to take you on. So I've currently have my books in 2 Angus and Robinson bookstores, and that was based on a manager who wants to promote self-published authors as well. So it is possible to go that way as well. Getting your book into the library, you can still do that as well. I go through, for my printing, a group called Lightning Source, which also you can choose the option of getting all your stuff distributed through them to all the different sites around the world with ebooks, and the same with print on demand. But they also put it on a list of where all the bookstores get their books in this particular company. And if someone decides to order your book through the library, they can. So it's on that database anyway. The only downside is through the bookstores, if you order through a bookstore, the price that they charge for your books.
So pretty much do they set that, or?
Well, originally you put in a recommended retail price, and I think I originally put mine down for about $20, and they ended up selling it for $40-something. So they basically choose the price. We have no control over that part.
Speaking of price, you were talking a little bit earlier on about how, as a self-published author, you do have to front a lot of those costs for getting the book put together and out there. What did you have to do before you actually started earning money back from sales to make sure that you met those costs? I mean, how much investment did you have to make in that first book? I mean, I guess I'm trying to get at that to at least give people who are thinking about it an idea of, you know, how much of their own funds they will have to put in order to get their own book out there, just so they're not suddenly surprised by, oh, holy crap, I didn't think it was going to cost me that much just to get the book out.
Yes, it is. It can be quite a costly endeavor, and that's where, especially first time around, you can learn a lot from the first time around. There's even agencies that can help you go through all the things that you have to go to do to get that first book out there, and that includes your editing, your covers, all the other little costs that are involved. But you're looking at probably, depending on the size of your book, maybe a few grand the first time round. And I was lucky I had that money available. You know, if you're going to do this, you need to put the money in no matter what. You don't want to take any shortcuts or anything like that. You want the best. You want a great cover. You don't want a cheap one. You want a good editor. You want all of the best with this first item that you put out. But everywhere you go, the cost of everything will vary as well, depending on how you go about it. So I can't really say how much it would cost each person, but I would say a few grand. And then it depends on marketing as well. How far are you going to go with your marketing after that? So in my case, I decided, and I only had 2 books at the time, but I decided to do conventions all around Australia. So these are the comic book conventions. My genre falls within, the fantasy, sci-fi, part of the whole realm of what, the Comic Cons are about. And, those costs alone, like I don't make money on those conventions at all because it's the cost of the table, the insurance, printing books and having them delivered. A lot of cases it's the flights, the accommodation, food, everything involved. The point is to get your name out there. And from there, hopefully people are messaging you and wanting those other books. And I've been lucky in the sense that, I went an entire year of just doing 11 cons in both Australia and New Zealand. And I get emails for the other books that they didn't buy at the time, that's what you want. And that's when people are enjoying your work.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you were talking a little bit about marketing earlier on and for self-publishing, and I think it's something that perhaps even traditional publishing and marketing venues are kind of getting confronted with nowadays, is that especially with the advent of social media, people are looking out of looking less to be marketed to and looking more to actually make personal connections with the people whose stuff that they're going to be buying. And I can imagine that when you're first exposed to that, it can be a little bit scary. So what was, venturing out into that social space and I guess being a guest at a stallholder, at one of those major conventions, your Supernovas, your Oz Comic Cons, etc. What was that experience like when you're actually not just saying, hey, buy my book, but actually having to be yourself online and say, hey, here's this cool thing that I've found, and did you guys, see the last episode of pardon me, just thinking my notes, wasn't the last episode of Banshee great, and what did you all think of it and that kind of thing? What was that experience like?
It is the craziest experience for yourself because with the social media, it's a bit different because any author that's starting out and is nearing publishing, they should already have their media accounts ready and going. And so they should already be creating relationships with a lot of people. It's a lot easier now because especially if you're a blogger or you're a reader and you're already on there and on a lot of the sites and you've become friends with a lot of the people that are on there, it's a lot easier to create fans that way, especially when you're you put out little excerpts so that people start to get to know you that way. Twitter was a bit different. When I did Twitter, I made a lot of personal relationships on there. Twitter is a lot harder to sell, but you can make, if you start helping out other authors, that was the best way I found to make connections that way. And that it's so daunting because, you don't know whether or not people are going to enjoy your work at all. And, as soon as you get that good review, it's only when you get reviews that you really know if someone likes your work and everything. But that whole thing leading up to it and that feeling when people start reading it, it's so hard, like you're so tense and you're constantly looking online, have they reviewed it? Have they reviewed it? And oh my God, now it's not so much a thing anymore because I've done it and everything and, you get good reviews, you get bad reviews and you want both, because then it tells you that, you know, it's genuine people that are actually reading your work. But doing that whole experience, yeah, you're just all tied up and everything, and you're so nervous. And the cons themselves is the same thing. You know, you're selling a product and you don't know whether or not people are going to enjoy it. And it's the same thing now. Like, they're still buying a product that they don't really know whether it's good, whether it's bad. And you still have that, you know, anxiousness about, are they getting their money's worth? And it gets easier. I know that. And it's hard because one of the things that happens with authors is, you know, you've read your book so much that you actually end up hating it a lot. And you're like, if you hate it, how are other people going to like it? So, yeah, there's no real way to describe it until you're doing it yourself, especially when you have like artists that are next to you and, you know, people straight away know what they're getting. And, you know, they either like the art or they don't. With you, it's an unknown. And all I can gauge it by is when people message me afterwards and tell me what they think and tell me they want the next books and things like that. So that's when you feel better about yourself, when you know you've got an audience.
Yeah. Now, you are at the point where you have got a trilogy of books published, of course. If you don't mind me asking, where does that kind of place you on what I'd like to call the paid-to-play spectrum? Is the income that you're now getting from the books sort of paying its own expenses plus a little bit extra? Is it actually, are you now a full-time author, or do you sort of have any other sources of income that are kind of keeping you, that are backing you up and keeping you going while you invest your time and your money into the next books in the the next books that you're working on, and also continuing to promote the Battles in the Dark trilogy?
At the moment, especially because I've been doing these cons, they've taken a lot of the money away. And that's okay to me because, as I said, it's all about creating an audience. And so even though at the moment, I'm not making money on it because I've been doing these conventions and a lot of other marketing things that take all the money away. But that's okay to me because at the end of the day, you are creating that audience. And then when you bring out something new, they're going to be wanting that as well. And so when you have that, when they want that, you know, everything you get a bigger audience, and therefore you start making more money based on that. I've actually cut down the amount of cons I'm doing. So hopefully that starts to shift where I am starting to make money. I'm now doing more smaller type things around the area. So as I said, I have my books into Angus and Robinson bookstores and I do signings with them. I'm going to there's a pop market that's going on, and the costs, because it's just up the 50 minutes up the road and everything, you know, you're not paying for all those other extras that go with it. So you start making money from that and just doing the small things at the moment. That's when I start to make more money. And ebooks, it's a different story again, because, you know, my genre itself is very, very hard to sell compared to if you're a romance author. Romance has always been seen as the money makers. So trying to get a lot of sales through that, I tend to try different techniques with that. One particular is because I've got the trilogy now, Amazon itself has a program called, I think it's Kindle Select. And if you're part of this program, you can put your first book up for 5 days for free. And the whole process of that, or point of that is, you know, if they read that first one, they enjoy it, they go buy the other 2 books. So hopefully, which I'm planning on doing very soon again. So you get to do it every 3 months, but I tend to do it every 6 months. And just to create more more audience through that. And, you know, you can get thousands of people that download it, and you just hope through that you get sales.
It must be good, though, at least, as you mentioned earlier on, the fact that you do have the trilogy out, and the more that you come out with, the bigger the audience you build, and every new person with the more books you have out there, it's more odds that person who discovers your work and likes it will then go and have a look and say, hey, I wouldn't mind reading more like this, find your back catalogue and go, holy crap, this is great, I've got more books that I can buy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also because it's a mentality out there at the moment for a lot of readers who are very impatient. And years ago, it was like you always had to wait a year between books. Now they want things now. So a lot of authors are smart where they've already written all of the books in the series. So therefore, you know, they just wait a few months and bring out the next book, then the next book, then the next book, so that people aren't waiting a long time. Because of that impatience and everything, you know, some people don't take you seriously if you don't have that first book out. Or you've only got the first book out. They think, oh, are you really going to write that second and third book or however many more? The other thing is others just don't want to buy books that are just the one at the moment. They'll wait till all of your other books are out.
It does seem like a common thing in media nowadays. I mean, binge watching has almost become a part of the common lexicon, where people will either go onto Netflix or go out and buy themselves a DVD box set, take a week's holiday or something like that, and consume 22 hours of television in one big hit. So I guess you can sort of understand that phenomenon carrying over to books as well.
Exactly. I mean, I love what Netflix has done, because there's nothing like watching the entire season instead of waiting week to week, because you still got that momentum going through each episode. Whereas with your normal just week to week, you know, sometimes it's not just week to week, you know, you've got to wait a few months until, you know, the second half of the season starts, or there's like a few weeks in between each episode and you forget what happens. So I understand a lot of reasons why people would prefer it that way.
From the sounds of it, it has kind of put a bit more pressure on authors, as you mentioned, to make sure that they do have their back catalogue already written by the time that they decide to actually start publishing it. I guess, you know, that's... I mean,
that, or they're really fast writers.
Yeah.
Like, I do know some people that can write books in 1 to 1.5 months.
Wow.
I know. I don't know how, but they do it. But they're also, a lot of them, they do it full time as well.
Yeah. Is that something that you still have was it an aspiration for you? And if so, is it still actually becoming a full-time author?
I would love to do that. Absolutely love to do that. I just have to find, I guess, the right... You just hope that, you know, each book that you create is that book that really sets it off for you. And you don't know until you keep putting stuff out. But as I said, at the moment, to me, it's just grabbing audience. And I'm hoping that, you know, the next stuff that I put out, you know, that's going to be one that really people take notice of. So you never know.
Well,
or I start to write really, really fast. And put out a lot.
A whole bunch of skills might suddenly click together in a particular way, and next thing you know, you're just cranking out the words at an incredible pace. It's like, why couldn't I have done this before?
I know.
So, of course, Battles in the Dark is done and out. What is next for Kimberley Clark? You mentioned before we started recording the interview that you are looking at making a change in genres. What are you working on, if you can let the cat out of the bag?
Divulge. At the moment, I'm writing a horror. However, this project is a little bit different to stuff that's out there at the moment because it's a hybrid project because what I'm doing is a half comic, half novel.
Wow.
So basically I'm looking at doing all my action scenes done in comic and the rest is written.
Right.
So trying something completely different. Huge risk, but, you never know.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes...
If people don't take risks,
yeah,
you never know what will happen.
And I think it's almost like that wonderful Steve Jobs quote, how will people know what they want unless I tell them? And
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, people can mock a concept, but sometimes it's when you actually present them with a finished thing and say, well, here, this is it. And they, try it and go, actually, this works. I didn't think it would be this good. So now I then, of course, have to ask, given that my guest from a couple of episodes ago, Wayne Nichols, is the gentleman who created the covers for Battles in the Dark, are you planning on tapping him for this project that you're going to be working on, or do you have some other people in mind?
No. Wayne's a very, very busy boy. And with all artists, you need funds behind you to be able to bring an artist on.
Yeah.
Because they can't work for nothing. And I have a few avenues that I'm going up at the moment in regards to that. One is possibly looking at a grant to employ an artist. Or the other one is looking at trying to find a publisher for this particular project. And hopefully they will find the artist for me, which I don't have to pay for.
Yeah.
But yeah, different ways. It just depends on how things work out.
All right. So we've got this wonderful comic novel hybrid that is on its way. Anything else?
Yes, I have. As I said, there was the sci-fi apocalyptic one that I was looking at with an alien ghost. He's the spirit of a race that comes to warn humans that this other race is coming to destroy our world.
Intriguing.
And they've already destroyed their world. And he can only talk to those that already have that sensibility to be able to see spirits. But he found it hard to get through to this particular girl because, she has it, but it's not that strong with her. So it takes a while for him to actually tell her what's going on. And by that time, it's too late that they've arrived. And it goes on from there where he helps her to go somewhere where they learn to hone their abilities. So move beyond just being able to see and hear, but actually take on different powers by opening their minds up so they can actually fight against the other race.
Well, science fiction and aliens and starships is usually right up my alley, so I might have to see about getting into that one when it comes out. Oh, well, so after, actually, I think I'm skipping a couple of questions, some of which you've already answered. I typically ask people at the end of every chat if there were 3 things that they've discovered during their journey and exploring their play and finding out how to get paid to do it that might help somebody who is just starting out. What would those 3 things be? I mean, you've already given us at least one, which is make sure to get beta readers who will go over your final draft. And I think you mentioned the second one, which was make sure to help other authors, especially ones who are also just starting out. Is there a third thing that you can think of that you reckon would help?
It's basically being on as many blogs as you can, it's putting the word out. Like, it depends on how you want to go about your marketing strategy. You can do blog tours, which is basically you go on to different blogs and you're there for like an hour on their Facebook page, and you give out free ebooks as prizes, and you do games and things like that. A lot of people, some people it works for, others it doesn't. The other thing is, if you don't have the time to do that, is doing book blasts with these blogs. So you pay a company to find so many blogs, and on your release day, they put your book up, the links about you, all your social media. It's basically getting the word out there as much as possible and looking at all the different avenues you can take. Some people it works for, others it doesn't. There is no right way of doing it.
Well, speaking of getting the word out there, after having listened to this episode of the Pay to Play podcast, where can people go to find out more about Kimberley Clark and get their hands on a copy of the Battles in the Dark trilogy and any future books, if those are, of course, out by the time this episode goes? Well, sooner or later they certainly will be. But anyway, I'm rambling. Where can people find you?
There's my website, which is www.kimberleyclarknovels.com. You can find out more about me on my Facebook page, which is once again Kimberley Clark Novels. You can either buy my books if you're in Australia and you want to print a signed print copy. You can contact me, and I generally charge $15 per book plus postage. Otherwise, it's ebooks on Amazon and a few other major books, Barnes & Noble. And I actually should put up the list of where they all are available, because there's a huge list now. But basically, yeah, through those.
Fantastic. And at the moment, given my schedule, it looks like this episode, I would say, will be coming out somewhere around about within the first couple of weeks of June. Do you have any convention visits planned at around about that time, or within the following couple of months?
Not at the moment. As I said, I've actually cut down on the amount of conventions that I'm doing. Next week, I'm doing the fandom market in Brisbane City at Fortitude Valley. Convention-wise, I'm looking at doing Brisbane Oz Comic Con, which is in September, I think.
Right. No worries. Well, at least that gives people, after this comes out, around about 3 months to get themselves sorted out and make sure that A, they can go, and B, that you're on their list to make sure to visit your table and see about a copy of the book.
There's also in June, I'm going to be at Wellington Point. And having a stand in Main Street for there with a bunch of other self-published authors.
Okay. So is Wellington Point a town or?
In Brisbane.
No worries. So it sounds like there's a bit of an independent author get-together there at the time?
Yes, they've got a few authors that are coming along to promote and sell their books.
No worries.
Which would be great.
All right. Well, Kimberley Clark, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and all the best wishes for your success with the Battles in the Dark trilogy and your next projects.
Thank you.